Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twitch Solves the Rubik's Cube. For the next 50 minutes, you guys will have control over a virtual cube through Twitch chat. Your guys' goal is to solve the cube collectively. In these difficult times, this is just another way that we can all connect together while being socially distant. Today with us for Twitch Solves is Chris Olson. Chris is well known in the community for being a top 2x2 solver, having held 3 world records, 6 US Nationals podiums, and a World Championship podium. Chris is also well known for his work on YouTube, both on his own channel, Silo the King, as well as his work with thecubicle.com on their YouTube channel. Recently, Chris has gone on to be a cinematographer for the upcoming Netflix documentary, The Speedcubers. We're excited to have him on today. Welcome, Chris, to Twitch Solves.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have him on, and we're going to give you guys a little bit of an overview of how this works. There's going to be a 20-second voting period where you guys can vote for a move. Valid moves are your standard moves on a cube. So you've got R, U, L, F, D, B, and then the slice moves, M, E, and S. You can have a prime for anti-clockwise and a 2 for double turns. You can always, after those 20 seconds, the moves with the most votes will be applied. And then we're going to have a 2-second cooldown to make sure that you guys can see what's going on and what's being updated live. There's going to be a lag, so make sure that you guys are getting your votes in early so that you're not voting too late. Finally, before we get this started, we'd like to thank Rubik's for supporting us with Twitch Solves the Rubik's Cube. And we'd also like to thank Lucas Garing for helping a ton with the software. Without further ado, let's get this event started and let's get talking to our guest here, Chris Olson. So let's get this started. Oh, the very first move that was voted on was an S2. I'm very proud of chat.
S2.
Yes, I'm very proud of chat. That is exactly what I expect from them every single time.
Wait, why?
That is the designated troll move. We've as the host of this, I've been trying to make sure that anyone who likes to mess with things in chat is going to be doing the same move because it's all like swim down kind of. Oh, there's the S2 that went on. I'm very.
Oh my goodness!
I try to get it to swim down, like in Finding Nemo. So, if the trolls all do different moves, the actual moves will be the ones that are applied.
I see. Excellent.
But let's get started with how are you doing?
Yeah.
How have you been holding up? How's life in Minnesota right now?
Good. It was not super great for the first couple months. I am very much an extrovert, so being completely locked down and not seeing anyone kind of sucked. So it was a lot of just work or playing games. And now that things are a little bit looser, I've been able to go out, and it's nice to just be out and not be locked down. I was telling Sarah, there would be days before COVID where I wouldn't go outside for a couple days, just work it because I work from home. So I was just sometimes I just end up being here a couple days and it wouldn't bother me. But now that I was not supposed to be places, it drove me nuts. It just went crazy. But we're doing well now.
That's good to hear. That's very good to hear. So we're very interested in this Speedcubers documentary that you've been working on as a cinematographer. Most of the shooting was done last year.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So
one question is, have you seen the documentary, the whole thing from start to finish? Is it done? Is it just, are we just waiting on other things?
Yes, it is completely done, and I have seen the whole documentary.
How'd you feel when you were watching it, especially as someone who's really, really close to the filming? Did you feel like it did justice?
Yeah, no, I think it came out great. I think one thing I found interesting is since I filmed it, there were certain things that I kind of knew were coming. And even with knowing kind of what was coming, I was still very engaged with the story. So I think especially people who obviously didn't film it, there'll be a lot of things that they will enjoy a lot. It was a very fun watch.
I'm very excited to hear that. Another thing that I'm curious about is, you're obviously very well known in the community for your YouTube channel, and you've been doing tons of online content. How did you get involved with a project of this size?
Yes, so it happened because of Why We Cube. So our director is Asher's mom. So she saw Why We Cube at Nationals, and then shortly after emailed me and was like, "Hey, I've been wanting to do a like really big speed cubing doc project, and I saw Why We Cube. We should work together." So after that, we kind of started talking what the roles would be, what ways I could help. So we had a lot of meetings well before we started, actually shooting anything. There was probably planning and just talking about things for like 6 or so months before anything actually happened.
Wow. And was it initially intended to be on Netflix? Was that sort of the you knew that as you were starting this, or you were thinking that it was just going to be another project that would be interesting and put on YouTube or sent to film festivals or things like that?
So I knew from the beginning it was like the intent was for it to be a very big project. Like it definitely wasn't going to be on YouTube. The Netflix was like our ultimate goal was like, yeah, we got this on Netflix. That's where we wanted to live. We weren't quite sure what that was going to look like from the beginning, but we ended up, getting in talks with Netflix, and they were highly interested in it.
Mm. So compared to other, projects that you've done, such as Why We Cube in particular, what's the difference between doing a long form cinematic video for your own YouTube channel, something like Why We Cube, or your other sort of personal like mini documentaries, such as the one on Ro Hessler? How does that compare to being on a huge, or I don't know how large the team was actually, being on a team for a Netflix documentary? Like, did you work with more people, things like that?
So our team was not huge. We had like an Australian unit and a US unit. So the US filmed in the US and Australia, and then in Australia we just needed more people for Worlds. I don't know what we were at max, like 20 people at the very most is my guess. But the core team of people was like 6 maybe. But it is very, very different. Having basically done everything I've ever done be completely solo, it was very different working in like a team environment. I think one of my favorite things I just was not used to having worked in this is we were at Worlds and we had camera assistants for each of us just to help with various things. And I was just standing there kind of taking a break, and the guy was like, "Give me your camera." And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, you shouldn't be holding it while you're taking a break." And I was like, I was like, it was just so weird having someone whose like sole purpose was like, just make my life easier. They would be like, "Tell me if you need like a battery or if you need food or whatever." And it like for the first couple shoots in Australia, it was like weird to ask for something. Like it felt mean to be like, "I need a battery." And then someone goes and runs and gets you a battery. But like after I got used to that, it was like a very nice thing to not have to focus on miscellaneous things that make your main task a lot harder.
Right, because your job is to film, not to do any of that other stuff. Although
literally nothing else.
To do it. Yeah.
Like right after, was it right after? It was shortly after that was US Nationals, and then I filmed that on my own, and it was so much less enjoyable. Like having to dump my memory cards, worried about figuring out my lunch, charging batteries, getting lenses, like running up, and it was just like I was very spoiled after that.
the difference between sort of like commercial production and things that you would do on YouTube, right?
It made me realize like if cubing gets to the point where like Nationals is like really looking for video content and I end up working on those types of things, I will absolutely like almost require that I have at least some crew of people to help, because it's just like I realized how much more you can do when you even just have a couple extra hands.
I see.
Yeah.
So Why We Cube, the one that the main documentary that you did sort of before this current project, did you have any extra hands for that? Did you have any other help? Did you do the whole thing yourself?
So it was pretty much entirely on my own. Towards the end, I had help in terms of just like showing it to people and being like just give me some advice. Like Schwan helped me quite a bit. There's a video when I went to Max and him and I were editing together, because it was like, that was a very overwhelming project like that. When I started that, I didn't realize how big of a scoped project it was going to be. Cause it was, I was everything. I was the lighting guy, the camera guy, the sound guy, the director, the writer, the storyteller, like everything. So it was just like, you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know if this is good anymore. Like, I really don't. Like, I've seen so much of this that it's like, maybe this is all garbage. So I had to have, people kind of come in and be like, does this make sense? Is this, look good?
So far in the weeds, you need some help sort of broadening out. You
get so blind. And also, not to mention, just being in cubing, there are certain things that granted, Why We Cube was like specifically designed for cubers, but there are certain things you get blind to when you know the people, because you're like, well, I know this about this person. I don't think that's that interesting, but someone else is like, that's super interesting. You know what I mean?
Or just, a piece of knowledge that you may need to sort of fill in any gaps that you have. But, when you take a step back and someone asks you about it, they may not.
And there was definitely lots of that where it was like things I was like, oh, this is fine. And then someone was like, you should really put this in there.
Yeah. So let's go back to the Speed Cubers, the upcoming one for Netflix.
Yep.
I wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions to how you got involved. One of them was, we know your official title, right? Cinematographer. And you mentioned a little bit early on that you had been doing some planning on the project even 6 months before you'd plan to shoot anything. What was the extent of your involvement? Was it mostly just that?
So my official title is associate producer and director of photography. Yeah. But so definitely just basically refer to me as the director of photography from it. Cause like I helped, basically the associate producer title was from like helping set up interviews or get connections to people. Cause like I knew all the cubers and generally had easy access to everyone. So it was kind of like last minute I could be like, hey, could you like come in and do an interview really quick? Like while we were in Australia or in the US. But like, as far as story goes or editing, stuff like that, I didn't touch any of that. Like creatively, I didn't do anything like that.
Did you want to do that kind of thing? Or did you feel like you would have been best, working on the filmography kind of stuff?
If I was like asked something creatively, I would definitely have helped. But I think when I started, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to be like super involved. But definitely as it picked up, I was like very content with just being the camera person, basically. Because after Why We Cube and how stressful that was, it was kind of nice to be like, all I have to do is film stuff. Like there's nothing else beyond like do this one job super good. So I was like more than happy with just that role.
Nice.
And I think that's a good question, because one confusion I have been seeing a lot of is everyone thinks I made this whole doc, which is like not the case. There was many people who made this whole project come to life. My role was like definitely a smaller one compared to like directing and all of that. So,
well, glad to clarify that for the community, but we're always sure that, the work that you did was very important and hopefully pulled out a lot of the interesting stuff that people are really interested in for this upcoming documentary.
Yeah, totally.
How much time did this take?
Oh wait, sorry. I thought you were talking about the cube for a second. I gotta say quick, I'm honestly impressed how quickly they've gotten here. Also, they're only at 47 moves. Like, I don't know if they've just gotten a lot better at this, but this seems way more organized than what I've heard and seen from previous videos.
Well, you saw they started with a bunch of S2s, but cross was fairly simple once they got their act together. And then they had a 3-move insert to a 3-move insert to a 3-move insert.
Legend.
And then 7-move last pair, fine OLL and a T-perm. You can't ask for a nicer solution.
There's like no way they can mess this part up, right? Like I assume it like a PLL, like it's pretty straightforward from here, right?
Yes, unless you give people a move that they should be doing instead of the actual move of the algorithm. So if you have a favorite move to apply to the cube, now's the time to suggest it if you don't want them to solve it super quick.
No, I would love to see them do this in a short amount of moves. Oh my goodness. Jeez.
It should be pretty good from here on out.
Good.
But the question I wanted to ask you is how much time this documentary took. Were you essentially working on it full time once you started on the project, or was it in harmony with something else that you were doing at that time?
So when we were in like the planning phase, which was, I think our first real meeting was in like January of 2019, is like when we all met in person, because we're all from all over the US. Before that, it was just like emails back and forth. And then also after that, it was just kind of emails. And then we had like a pre-shoot where we went out and filmed a bunch of stuff that we may use for the doc, but also just kind of get our feet wet working as a team. But once June started, it was like literally just a full month of the only thing I'm doing is shooting. Like June 15th to like July 20th was nothing but the doc. So it was full time for that month. But before that, I was, doing my just like usual freelance YouTube and all that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was a crazy month. It was.
So, are you talking like 10-hour days, 12-hour days?
It varied a lot. I'm trying to think back. When did I usually? Well, so first of all, when I got to Australia, my whole body was like messed up. I would wake up at like 5 a.m. every day. Trying to think. It varied a lot. Like Worlds, those were really long days. That was like you're up really early and you're up probably till at least midnight. I would say I was normally up by like 5 or 6, just like getting gear ready, making sure everything's ready. But some days were really long. Some days were shorter, because before Worlds, it was just me following Max. So my day was basically whatever the parks do, I'm doing as well. So
just filming. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just followed them around for an entire day. So if they were like, we're just going to be in our hotel room, I was just in the hotel room, just filming and, waiting for some interaction or something to happen.
Gotcha. It looks like we're only one move away from getting this solved. So
I just saw a lot of S2s and E2s. So I'm curious if this gets solved.
I think U2 is definitely dominating the chat right now. So
very nice chat.
Moved.
That's
congratulations.
Good.
Chat's got a complete solved cube now. And we'll probably be doing another solve because we have plenty of time for it. And maybe this time the scramble is going to be... Oh, there's the S2.
There's the S2. How long do you think it's going to take before they beat 63 moves? Like, I feel like that's really good for doing this through Twitch.
I'd love to see them, without the scramble being provided, try and do a sub 30 move solution at some point. You
think Twitch chat could do a sub 30 move?
That's my challenge. I think they can, if they're patient and they can get this, it would probably be like Cube Explorer or something that they would try and like put all the stickers on.
Right.
I think they can get it.
That would be insane. I would be absolutely mind blown if this many people could be that coordinated.
Oh, Leo Borromeo in chat has suggested domino reduction. So if chat can do it, Leo believes in you guys. So
I would love to see how many of them could do domino reduction.
Domino reduction would be quite incredible. But
they should try brew at some point.
I think at one point we had Andrew Nathanson Colorful Pockets on, and he does ZZ, and we've mentioned to chat that they should try ZZ. And at one point, all of the edges were oriented, and the EO line was done. And then they were doing F2L, and they broke up the EO.
Wait, how do you? Once you have EO and line done, it's so easy to not mess it up from there.
There's like one case where it's easier to do 2 F moves. I could set it up, but we'll see if I can get it.
Totally.
So, let's get back to this documentary.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm personally and a bunch of other people as well have been interested in is sort of when you were making different shots, when you were filming different things, what were you thinking about? Like, what is the process that went through your head when you were looking at a shot, whether or not you wanted to, I don't know, do camera things, zoom in, zoom out, focus on it, sort of change angles, whether or not a moment was important? What were you thinking?
Yes, that's actually a really good question. One thing that helped me a lot is I always had headphones on, and typically it was Mickey. We had Mickey with a mic, so it was kind of like a superpower. At least that's what it felt like. Is it was a wireless mic, so I could be like on a break, and I could generally still hear them, assuming they weren't too far away. Like it had to be in a couple 100 feet range. But if I just heard certain conversations, it was like drop whatever you're doing, just like run over and like start filming. So that was super handy to have. There was a lot of shots. There was no way I would have gotten if I didn't have that. As far as figuring out things that were interesting, that's like tough to explain. So pretty much my whole role was follow Max. Like my character was follow Max. I would get other things if Max wasn't doing anything eventful, but for the most part, it was always following him. And there was a lot of interesting moments. And I guess one thing you have to think about when you're doing a documentary is like the shots you get have to be able to like tell a cohesive story, right? Like I can't just sit if Max and Mickey are talking. I can't sit in one spot for 10 minutes for their whole conversation and just film them talking. Like you need cutaways. So I need to, a close up of Mickey talking. At some point, I need to know when is the right time in the conversation to move and get Max. That was actually one thing that was kind of hard to decide on is like, I can't just sit there and film Mickey the whole time. They're not going to show a 2.5-minute shot of Mickey talking the whole time. So you have to like cut away at some point, but you don't want to cut away if there's like a really emotional thing that's about to happen. Like maybe Mickey's about to say something to Max. You can't just switch off of that. So you have to use kind of best judgment to figure out when that's going to be. And, maybe if Max has a cube in his hand, I get a close up of that just to kind of cut away from. But a lot of it was just kind of hearing their conversation and going like, okay, this is an important part of Max. And like, this is something the audience would want to see or needs to hear about. Now, what are the shots I can supplement that conversation with? As far as like cubing, that's always pretty easy. That's like
just
lock down and just film the shot,
over the shoulder.
Exactly. Right. Occasionally there was stuff, you would have to kind of decide between, like when we were in the US, we didn't have as large of a crew. So the first comp we filmed, if the other person was filming something else and I was just on Max, there were certain shots, like one of my favorite shots, I actually think it might be one of the posters that they used, but it's a shot behind Max and the audience like staring at him. And it was 3x3. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I have to choose between getting this shot that I know like shows a lot of context about Max, like seeing, 100 people watching him tells a lot about who Max is. I have to choose between that or the solve and maybe he gets a world record. So it's like, you kind of have to feel it out on the day. Like, how's Max been doing the last few solves? Like, was it 7s? Okay, I can probably go get the shot. If he's getting 5s, like I probably shouldn't go behind him.
Are there moments that you wish you could have gotten on film, but you were unable to for one reason or another? Sort of like those types of moments, or like for some moments?
Nothing that I can think of immediately. There probably were some things that I would like kick myself for, like I wish I had been over there for that, but nothing that was like missed a huge critical thing. Because one thing that was nice about having a crew, especially once we got to Australia, is someone was always covering something important. Like there was no way something important was going to get missed with all the people we had, which made things a lot easier. But only thing I can think of is like maybe occasionally there was a conversation I overheard and I was just too far away to get there before that conversation was going to be over. But nothing that was going to be super crucial.
Gotcha. Well, do you have any other projects in addition to this that you're working on right now? Anything to be excited about within cubing, or anyone who's interested in following your filming career?
Nothing really. I guess the only thing that would be even remotely like people in here may want to follow is I've been running an online course for editing in Premiere Pro. That's been like my main focus over the last year, has been building that out. Like long term, that is what I would like to do, is strictly just, I mean, I'll always be making films, but like my main primary source of income, I would like to be that. But as far as cubing goes, I don't have any projects in the can right now, especially with COVID going on. But maybe next year's nationals, if cubing needs big media or something, I may, pop in there and help out. Yes, fingers crossed that there's even a nationals next year or anything big next year.
We're hoping. We're always hoping, dude.
Seriously.
We had some viewer questions that we'd like to get to before we really open it up to Twitch chat if they have anything for you.
Okay.
Jordan G asked, I remember you saying that the Why We Cube documentary was hard to make. What was the thing that pushed you to keep going and finish the entire project?
Oh man, that's a good question. So the funny answer was money, because I pitched the idea to the Cubicle and they were like, yeah, we'll like fund it. So I had already I went to Paris and a couple other places, and I was like getting very stressed very quickly. I realized holy cow, this is a huge project. I did not realize it was going to be this big. And at that point I was like, crap, I have already used this money. You can't just be like, well, it's too hard, I'm not going to do it after they've given you money. So that's the funny answer, is money. Kind of, I had to finish it because of that. But realistically, there was a lot of people who helped along the way in terms of just moral support, or, having a second set of eyes, or just, general encouragement. Because it was, that I would say is the most stressful project I've ever worked on by far. That was just so many things in that. A story I don't think many people probably know is the month before it was supposed to be done. So Nationals was in July, and I was going on the West Coast cubing tour. So I only had a certain amount of time before, literally couldn't work on it anymore because I was going to be gone for a month. And I had just moved to a new apartment, and I had accidentally swapped a couple power cables on my card reader for my computer, and I think it was a hard drive cable and the card reader cable. I swapped them, didn't realize it. They looked the exact same. My card reader started smoking, and I was like, that's not good. So I unplugged that. Then my computer shut down, and my whole motherboard was fried, right in the middle of working on this project. So I had to spend 2 weeks. First, I was like, can I even fix this? Nope, couldn't fix it. The motherboard was totally shot. Then I had to get a motherboard, and I had to make it. I use a Hackintosh, so it's a custom built PC that runs Mac OS, and it's very picky about the parts that you use. So I couldn't just go get any motherboard. So that took a lot of time. That was very stressful at the end of Why We Cube. And then there was a lot of just editing problems I was having with Premiere that were giving me a hard time. But so yeah, that was a crazy project.
Wow. That sounds like every filmmaker's nightmare. Just losing your computer and having problems with your hard drive.
Yes.
Or in your card reader. You're worried about your cards, you're worried about your computer.
Yep. There are a lot of things I learned from that I'll never make some of those mistakes again.
I don't do this for a living, but I could feel that emotion that you might have felt at that exact moment of oh my goodness, kind of panic.
It was very bad. You can people can ask Sarah whenever they see her next, because she was up with me while I was making it. It was literally each day of editing was 14-hour days nonstop. It was I'm not going anywhere. This has to get done. It was crazy.
Did you set any specific deadlines for yourself, like Nats 2018 or a film festival?
I knew I had to have it done by Nats because I wanted it to premiere at Nationals, and then after Nationals, I submitted it to some film festivals. So Nats was just my deadline, and I had some before that where I was I could probably have this done in May. And then May showed up, and I was I'm not even halfway through this. I was
wow.
That's not happening anymore.
What took the most time? Was it the editing itself?
Yay. That's tough. So I started shooting whenever Worlds was. Nationals and Worlds is when my first shoots for it. And I didn't finish shooting until January or February of the year it premiered. So, but the thing was the shoots were spread out over so much time. I had Nationals and Worlds, and then I had quite a bit of downtime, and then I had to go to New York and Ohio to Drew, but they were spread out over time. And then once I got to editing, it was just from probably February-ish till June was like just all editing.
Wow.
But I did slack off quite a bit initially because I was like, well, that'll be fine. Like I have 4 months to finish this. Never do that. That's procrastination's terrible.
You heard it here first, folks. Don't procrastinate.
Yes.
A couple other questions that we've got. Braden Adams asks, what is your favorite moment as a cuber, or what are your favorite moments as a cuber and as a videographer?
That's a good question. Cubing wise, it's definitely got to be, I think something I think back all the time is just like, like the podium at like Worlds 2017, that was really big. Just because of how much film stuff I was doing there. Like I'd practiced a ton for that comp, like probably some of the most I'd ever practiced. Cause I knew like if I didn't podium at that Worlds, like it was probably never going to happen again. Just with, yeah. So that was really exciting. I think just stuff like that are some of my favorite cubing moments. Like I occasionally, that video like pop up on YouTube and I'm like, oh, that is like a really good memory. Even this last Worlds, like I think back, even though I like completely botched that final at the end there, like it was very exciting to be in that Worlds final for 2x2 while I was like making a documentary. Like I expected to not compete at all, but our director was like, Max isn't doing anything during 2x2, so like you can go, compete. So that was also a very exciting moment. There's just like nothing like being at Worlds in front of that many people in like such an important round. It's just like very exciting.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive. Not only are you doing not only are you doing tons of filming stuff, you're also able to make Worlds finals. So big congratulations there.
That was definitely crazy. But as far as video stuff, I think probably there are certain like moments I would say were like milestone moments as far as filming within cubing. The Roe Hessler video, that was a huge milestone. I planned for like 6 months on that video. And when I made it, I was horrified that everyone was going to be like, this is so stupid. Like, what were you thinking? Like I don't know why I thought that, but I was like deathly terrified of that. So that was a really big moment in terms of like, oh, these people like these story videos. And it was fun to tell the story. Once I did Max's, that was like skyrocketed my desire to do story-based videos because I had only just met Max like a week before. And Schwan was like, hey, we should work together and like make a video about Max because a lot of people don't know about his autism. And at that time, no one, like people knew who Max was, but like his autism was still pretty unknown. So being able to make that video and like, it was just one of my favorite videos I've ever made. Everything just kind of fell into place with that, especially him winning Worlds. That all fell into place. But it was just, I felt like I was helping someone, and that was a really good thing. Like being able to take someone's story and help them out was like, it's like, wow, this is a cool skill to be able to have.
Yeah. That was also a very inspiring video. I'd like to mention that as someone who's watched it probably an unhealthy number of times, but it was honestly a really very touching. Someone who was, not directly involved with the story at all, but definitely involved in the community in different ways. So
for sure, that will probably go down as one of my favorite videos I've ever done.
Yeah. That one was a good one.
Thank you.
Alfedez in chat is asking about, or a viewer question ahead of time. I'm sorry. It's not.
Yeah, no, all good. All good.
Alfedez was asking specifically after watching Netflix's documentary about Formula One called Drive to Survive. It's clear that sometimes Netflix dramatizes circumstances to draw a bit of attention to things and to make the story more exciting and exaggerated. What kinds of things should we be expecting from the Speedcubers documentary in terms of how it portrays cubing? Have they given you enough freedom, or to film, and Sue enough freedom to help out?
So that's actually a really good question. We were quite free during filming. It was all us. Like we called all the shots. Like it was basically our crew. Like Netflix, while we were actually shooting, Netflix wasn't like there like we need you to get these shots and do this and film that type of thing. Like, we made all those decisions. Once it got to editing, Netflix was a little more involved, but everything in the story is very factual. There was nothing that was like over dramatized for the sake of being over dramatized. Like, anything that was in there is just how it happened. So people definitely don't have to worry about that, because that is definitely something I was a little afraid of. Like, I was wondering, once it got to editing, would Netflix kind of like be like, well, you have to tell the story this way, and they definitely didn't do that. So can confirm there will not be any over dramatic things.
That's very refreshing to hear, and combining that with your large approval of it when we asked you when you had watched it, I'm sure people could be very excited at this point to go and watch that documentary when it comes out in just over a week at this point.
Oh, actually, one thing I do want to specify quick. This is one thing that Netflix was involved with. When we set out to make this doc, we wanted to make it a 90-minute documentary. Like, we wanted to tell a really large story. But that was the one thing Netflix felt extremely strong about, was that they wanted it to be 40 minutes and not longer. So that was one thing that was not budged on, that they were definitely involved with. I still think the story was told very well in 40 minutes. I think if we had more time, there are certain things we could have expanded on more. But yeah, that was our only really big restriction, was that we were stuck to 40 minutes. We would have liked to tell a longer story.
Do you think that restricted or hampered any of your filming at all? Or do you feel like it was just, you had to condense the story and there were fewer explanatory details, or
Yeah, so it was definitely the latter. So when we were filming, we filmed as if we were making a 90-minute documentary. And then once it got to editing, Netflix was like, okay, gotta cut it down. Yeah. So we definitely, honestly, we had enough footage to where we probably could have told multiple documentaries.
Wow.
We had a lot of footage.
Was it mostly centered on Felix and Max?
Yes.
Or like, you think you could have done one just about Worlds 2019 and another one just about...
I think we could have probably done one on Worlds as well. Like, we had a lot of people. Our main subjects were Max and Felix, but we were capturing all sorts of people. Like, anyone who was relevant in something fast, like, we captured them, did lots of interviews with different people. So yeah, we honestly, you probably could have even just told a whole story about just speed cubing on its own. There are certain things we didn't film because that wasn't our intention, but if we had known that going in, we could have, yeah. There's footage on there that's, I wish could see the light of day for another doc or something.
That's always a shame, but I'm excited about what was produced and what was created. So
yeah, I'm excited for everyone to see it. It's cool just to think that Netflix, or like, speed cubing is now going to be on a platform this large. Like, in 5 years ago, it was like the biggest thing we had was maybe something on TV in like the news or something. Now it's like Netflix is literally on. Like, have you seen the documentary King of Kong?
That's the is that the Donkey Kong documentary? Yeah. I've seen that.
Like, that's talked about so much. I don't know if this will get to that or not, but it would be so awesome if, like, you just heard someone on the street that was like, dude, you seen that Speed Cubers doc?
That if that ever happens to me, if someone I overhear that conversation, I know that you and this whole community has made it. We've made it. So.
You know what was exciting? I was looking, Netflix posted the trailer on their YouTube channel, and there were a ton of non-cubers that were like excited about the doc. They were like, this looks really good and really interesting. I expected the usual, like, this is a bunch of nerds, like that whole type of thing. So it was cool to see that they were excited about it as well.
Well, it's less about just the history of speed cubing or something along those lines, and more of following real people in a real community and how this community deals with that. So
yeah. Also, just on a note, I can't believe they're actually about to beat the 63 from that last one. I really didn't think. I thought it was going to be like a couple streams that it was going to take them to beat this.
Well, okay, they're beating it by 2 moves. It's a 61.
Well, right, but they're still beating it.
This is true.
Twitch, the first one was like 112 moves, wasn't it?
Yeah, somewhere along that. So
like they're like, I don't know how long ago that was at this point, but they've like halved it. So like, props to chat.
they're efficient. They're good. The crosses could always use a little bit of work, but once you get into F2L, they're pretty good. So good job, Twitch chat. That's 2 solves, and we had to start a little bit late too. So 2 solves in 40 minutes. That's fairly efficient.
Yeah, props to you guys.
But we have another question from the viewers. Guard Cube had asked, do you have any tips for younger videographers on how to improve their skills and how to develop?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I did early on that I think helped a lot is like every video I made. Well, first of all, I carried a camera everywhere I went. So like outside of cubing, like it didn't matter where I went, I had a camera. At the time, I was doing a lot more photography, but I still just always had a camera with me, which just meant I was always doing something with it. But I think a big thing is always try and do something better from the last video or even different. Like when I was doing YouTube reviews on my channel, like there's, a lot of people who just have a style and they just follow that. My big thing was like, I want to do something different every time. Like almost to a fault where like sometimes I would do something and people really liked it. And I was like, well, I can't get stale and keep doing the same thing. So I would just like change it. So whether that's learning something new, like trying a new shot technique, trying a new animated graphic, or just different format, like something, always try and experiment with it. Cause you may find you really enjoy one style. You might find something you're really good at, or just you're learning a new skill, which is always good. So always just push yourself to be learning something new is like by far the biggest thing. And obviously just do it regularly as well. Like if you want to get good, you just lots of practice, you will get better at it.
And we're talking, you started doing this 10, 11 years ago at this point, 2009 when you started doing YouTube, right?
I guess, yeah. So I started YouTube in 2009, but I wasn't doing anything serious with a camera until like 2013 is like about when I started, like, I was like, I'm going to get good at video, but I was doing a lot of YouTube stuff before that. So that actually, as far as actually, that's a good thing for everyone here. If you have a YouTube channel, that is just a good life skill. I cannot tell you the amount of times like being able to speak in front of a camera has been like a beneficial thing. So if you do a YouTube channel, you should do lots of that because it's just a good life skill to have.
I'm gonna also say that kind of thing is very useful. Being able to improvise on the fly as well is really good, and doing YouTube content or Twitch content is a good way to be able to do that without putting yourself in high pressure situations. Like, I don't know, high school me would have thought doing a speech in front of the class was pretty high pressure, and obviously the pressure can go up and up, but for a lot of our viewers it's
did you not like public speaking in high school?
I hated it.
What changed then? Because you're so good at it now.
YouTube, 100%. A ton of unlisted videos are, I'm like embarrassed saying this, but back in like 2014 and 2015, I did a ton of just completely random videos where I would just talk and monologue at a camera. And that helped a lot. Just literally just talking like that. But also actually working with you on a lot of your earlier projects. I remember there was one where you came down to a Maryland competition, and it was sort of billed as pro cubers say, just go to competitions.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was a really good video, by the way.
Thank you.
That was sort of the point where I'm like, I know now that I'm very comfortable in front of a camera. Like, you set up equipment, you shine some bright lights in my face, and I just say, I can do this. I don't have a script. I don't have anything except Chris asked me this question. I can find an answer, and we're just going to go with it.
You by far are my favorite on-camera person in cubing to work with, because I swear there's like nothing you can't. It's like if I ask you a random question, you're going to give me a good answer. If I'm like, we need an on-camera person who can be funny or natural or whatever, like, you just know you're pretty much always going to be at the top of my books when it comes to that stuff.
I appreciate the kind words, Chris.
But see, look, now everyone in chat should take note of this. Keaton hated public speaking. Well, okay, also I did too. I hated being in front of people. I was terrified of it. So YouTube does a lot of good wonders for that.
I still get nervous when I'm competing at large competitions in important rounds. So that still hasn't gone away, but I can talk in front of a large audience, and that's not a big deal.
Right.
Just, it's first like just talking to friends on the internet, and then talking to a webcam of people that, some of them are your friends and some of them aren't. And then after that, it's just go.
Yeah, right.
So maybe for you, it's talking in front of a really nice, I don't know any camera terminology. So a nicer thing than a webcam, but that kind of thing is very good for upcoming people and anyone interested in public speaking in general.
Totally.
Well, we're starting to come close on time. So the last question that I want to ask you is, do you have any last thoughts or any last things that you'd like to say to people, both about yourself and about this upcoming documentary that's going to be on Netflix?
Yeah. So I think one thing I definitely like to say is I've been seeing a lot of just people like trying to speculate like what the documentary is about, and just to like set, especially the cubing people's expectations, is this film was definitely designed like large audience first. Like the people who don't cube is what this film was, who it's for. Like I'm seeing people who are like, well, they might touch on like the history of how cubes are made and stuff like that. That stuff's not touched. It's very much about following Max and Felix, within the cubing community. We obviously talk a lot about cubing. It's about cubing. I think all the cubers are going to like it, but just keep in mind, there may be like little things where it's like, oh, well, that would have been cool to talk about as a speed cuber, but the general audience may not have cared about that, or it would be too hard for them to follow, especially in like a 40-minute span where you're just trying to get them up to speed with like, what's an average of 5, or, what's a single world record and all this. So don't expect it to be like this massive deep dive of everything cubing. It's definitely for mainstream audience first.
That's good to know and good to hear. Do you think it's still going to be great for people that are speed cubers and really in the weeds?
Oh yeah, I definitely think I think there's a lot of things in it that people don't know and are going to find interesting, but I just didn't want people to think it's going to be like, in 1983, this is when blah, 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 all that type of stuff. We know it's like not like that. It's very much about Max and Felix and their stories.
Gotcha. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on. We've, I'm sure chat and I in particular have enjoyed spending the last hour talking with you.
Yeah.
And listening and learning so much about this, both your projects and this upcoming documentary.
Yeah. Definitely. Thanks for letting me be on here and be able to just like talk to people about this. It feels nice to just kind of, I've been seeing so many comments about it and I can't respond to everything, or like information gets in one spot, but not the other. So thanks for having me and, letting me chat with everyone.
It has been an honor having you on. Guys, Chris Olson is a cinematographer for the upcoming Netflix documentary, The Speed Cubers. Catch its premiere on Netflix on Wednesday, July 29th, in just over a week. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Keaton.
We'll be right back.